Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We are currently experiencing technical difficulties with getting Dr. Richard Allen Miller connected, and we are working feverishly on that. And you know, that darn Microsoft product Skype requires another update. So just before airtime, here we go, trying to update. And naturally, we're stuck in a loop, but we are working on it. And, you know, Skype was a really great product until Microsoft bought it. Really. It just worked and worked and worked. And I guess maybe adding all the spy tech features to it, you know, that I believe Microsoft is being paid to do by the government corporation. That's my opinion. I believe that that's why we have so many problems with Skype. It used to be really, really a nice product. Well, Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. And the call screen is up. We can take your calls, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up, 605-477-3249. And I've got a couple things I wanted to mention. I'd been invited to, Mrs. Finelli, do me one favor, please. We're on the air. I need to know Rick Miller's Skype user names so that I can pass them on to Nathan. Thanks very much. Okay, so I just got that question asked for Nathan. So here's a question that I was asked during a get-together of preparedness-minded people. And the question was, what are you preparing for? And my answer was, if you boil it down, I don't know if the grid down situation is going to happen first from an EMP or a tactical nuke or sabotage by somebody taking out transformers, you know, with an attack on the United States that was coordinated. I don't know if it's going to be that, or I don't know if it's going to be poison. I don't know if it's going to be the food supply. I don't know if it's going to be a natural disaster. I don't know if it's going to be setting the United States on fire with 5G technology. I'm not really sure which of these things would be first. So my response to that question is, I'm preparing for a supply chain failure. Supply chain. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you go to get something at the traditional outlet, whether it be the supermarket, whether it be the big box stores, whether it be the home improvement stores, or whether it be through the internet, and it's not available. Has that ever happened to you? It's happened to me. As a matter of fact, we have the fixtures in our house, we can call them sinks and toilets and so forth, are made by a company called American Standard. Why? Because, well, when I was growing up, those are the appliances that we had. American Standard. Those are the fixtures that we had. Well, it used to be that they worked great. They were top quality, and they would last forever. Who would think that a toilet would wear out? Seriously. Well, now we make toilets so poorly to cut out the cost. The glazing on the inside has been omitted. So the porcelain, to allow the toilet to flush year after year after year without getting lime buildup in it, Well, that's been omitted. And then the cost of the replacement parts, so the flush valve. It used to be simple. You just get a flapper valve, you put a new flapper valve in after 3, 4, 5 years, and it cost, 59 cents. At one time, there were 29 cents. Now you have to take the toilet tank off the toilet bowl. You need a new flush valve. You need a flush valve connection seal. And if you had to have a plumber do it, it would probably be a couple $100 to do what used to be able to be done for 29 cents. So that's what happened to those of us who have been conned into buying new appliances, appliances as well as fixtures. Well, so I called American Standard because we needed a new flush valve. Why? Because the new ones cake up with lime in the water, hard water. Isn't that amazing that the flush valves cake up with water and they stop flushing? They get stuck in the open position. So these high-efficiency, low-water usage toilets get stuck with the valve open so that they run until you catch it. Can you imagine that? Well, that's what happens. So I called American Standard. They said they would send me a new flush valve. It took about 10 days to get it. Can you get it at the home improvement store? Not necessarily. But then, not only do you need the new flush valve, you need the new flush valve gasket that connects the tank, the toilet tank, the top tank, with the toilet bowl. And that doesn't come from American Standard unless you specifically ask for it, which I did. I said, not only do I need the flush valve, but I need the gasket for that. And you know what? They're back ordered. So what do you do if you have a toilet that runs and runs and runs? You take it apart. The old gasket gets damaged when you take it apart. And there's no way to take it apart without it being damaged because it compresses. And it takes the shape of the material on both sides of the compression, the tank and the bowl. And then you try to reuse the old gasket and it leaks. So you can't do that. So you take the toilet apart again, and then you have to get the gasket. Well, I ordered that from American Standard. They didn't ship it. So I called them up and I said, yo, what gives? I was a little more polite than that. They said, well, we're out of them. But I'll tell you what, as soon as we get them, we'll send it to you. They knew that they didn't have it. They didn't tell me they didn't have it. They didn't tell me when it was going to be in. They didn't tell me it was back ordered. So I'm waiting and waiting, and I had to call them again. So I'm probably going to get it within a couple weeks, maybe. So what I'm telling you is the supply chain is precarious. And these are the good days. So can you imagine? I mean, it's not like we don't have other bathrooms in the house. But can you imagine if you had one and you were ignorant enough, as I was, to buy an American Standard toilet because it really wasn't clear that you couldn't get these parts readily. And you bought one and you were without your toilet for 3 weeks or more. Think about that. That's where we're headed, in my opinion. Do we have Dr. Richard Allen Miller with us?
Yes, he is.
Hey.
I'm here.
So glad you...
Finally, like last week, there's irregularities going on everywhere. And I don't understand it, but I'm getting used to the unexpected curveballs. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was talking about. Unexpected curveballs, like from American Standard. Rick,
it's going to be in every single part of our life. Everything is breaking down. And in all areas, from going to a Safeway store and going to the shelf where I would normally get my plum sauce or my this or my that Jell-O cheesecake, they're no longer carrying it. I have to go to a different store to find it. Why would Safeway stop carrying something that they've carried for 30 years? And that's just a metaphor across the board on everything.
Yeah, years ago, I bought some, when we lived in Virginia, I bought some Virginia brand honey. And I used to like to have honey with tea. Okay, so I'd make a pot of tea, and here's how I would do it, class. I would take tea, put one bag. Now, John Stadtmiller thinks I'm crazy for doing this, but one bag of tea in one of those glass pots that you see, those Bunn coffee maker pots, those semi-spherical pots. They're kind of flat on the bottom, but other than that, they're spherical with either a brown pouring spout or orange, depending on whether the coffee is regular coffee or decaffeinated. Well, I like to make coffee in those because I have them. And I would hang one tea bag off the side, inside, and maybe have 8 cups of water. Lots of water, very little tea. And then once I made the tea in that, I pour it into a cup. And back then it was a tan-colored cup or a white-colored cup. And then I would take a teaspoon of Virginia brand honey that I bought at Sam's Club. I put it in there, and the tea would go from tan-colored tea with water to black. Yeah, black. And so it never happened to me before. And the reason I knew it is because the mug was tan, white, or actually a clear glass mug. So I called up the company, and they couldn't believe it. And I said, no, I'm not kidding. Well, what happened was I said, you guys try it. And they did. And I got to talk to top management at Virginia Brand. Now, when you buy Virginia Brand honey, in big letters, Virginia. So you're thinking, this honey's from Virginia. And it's from Sam's Club. So naturally, they've done their due diligence, and they made sure that it was top quality, and it was not being misrepresented. Well, the real story is Virginia Brand honey, the company, gets honey from China. And they get the honey, and the honey, they traced it all the way back to the honey, the hives, the beehives in China. And what would happen is the workers would get the honey, scoop it into these galvanized metal pails. And they'd bring it back for processing. Ultimately, it'd be put in barrels and shipped to the United States. Well, the honey was contaminated by using the galvanized metal pails, which caused the honey to turn the tea black. So what's the next thing to happen? They recalled all the honey. Rick, what are you preparing for? I was asked.
Okay, I have some very important comments that I'd like to make. And what I'm going to say right now is this is in metaphor, your Virginia honey. Now, it used to be that you had 3 different kinds of department stores in your community. You had one that was local, you had one that was regional, and you had one that was international or national. In other words, like Harbor Freight and Walmart. And these are China. And that everything then they saw pretty much came from China. Walmart was the leader, and everything that you bought left the region. That means you got your batteries, but the money to buy those batteries went to another country. The regional one, let's say Fred Meyer in the West Coast, the West Coast has Fred Meyer, very nice upscale. The food is a little better quality than Thriftway or Safeway. And that was regional, and it would be for 3 states. And then there was Bi-Mart, which was the local one, the one where when I first moved into the state of Oregon, because of my top secret clearances, I couldn't find work anywhere. I got work at Bi-Mart. The people there, everybody knows everybody. It's a community thing. It was your best buy for anything. Anything that Bi-Mart carried was going to be cheaper than anywhere else in town, including Safeway or whatever, including local. Now, when you buy honey, as a metaphor, one of the primary benefits of honey is for the allergens that you're going to be exposed to from the local honey. When the honey comes from another country, the pollen in that has nothing to do with the pollen in your neighborhood, which means all you're buying is sugar. You're not buying a medicine, which, by the way, honey can be rightly seen as that, because if it comes from a local one, it's got local flowers and local bloom that is pollen inside it. Now, this is a metaphor for why you want to, before you do anything else, first buy from local. It's like a garage. You've got your used car dealership, and you've got your new car dealership, and you've got your local mechanic that happens to be your friend and comes to dinner. Now, it used to be medicine was like that. My dad's surgeon came to dinner, not every weekend, but almost every weekend, because that man saved my father's life. And my father was grateful for it, and it was like a local thing happening. Today, surgeon doesn't even know who you are. Walks in, looks at the sets, preps you, and off it goes with your knee, hip, or whatever. The caring, the local pampering is what the nurses do, not the doctor. And that concept has led to very poor bedside manner and the nature of what healing and health are all about. And the whole thing is, I'm going to urge you in the year 2019 that before you take a single dollar out of your wallet, you consider where that dollar's going, because cheapest is no longer best buy. And when I say that, that's the original way it used to be. You had Craftsman and Snap-on as best buy. Per dollar spent, you got more for your buck. Today, instead of cheapest, what we have is a choice of cheapest. Whether you buy it from Harbor Freight, you buy it from Sears and Roebuck. Sears and Roebuck started in Seattle. When I was a little boy, it was down on Spokane Street, and it was a 4-story building. And then they had the catalog that you would look at before Christmas to dream about what kind of toy you'd find under the tree. All of that concept and way of living is gone now with the internet. Buying local is where you're supporting the local community.
Yeah, a lot of thanks go to Bill Gates, the dark side of what happened.
Well, he's no longer Washington State, I can tell you that. Bill Gates didn't even start it out there.
So, Rick, you mentioned that cheapest is not necessarily the best buy. I've got 2 examples of that. We can put an exclamation point on it. One is, during the commercial break at the bottom of the hour, just a minute ago, I ran out into the shop, and I was looking at what our son was doing. And he had the drain plug out of a vehicle. It was a metric drain plug. And it was made in China. And he said, Dad, look at this. And so he put the drain plug on a flat surface, and he said, it's bent. It's not like it was deformed by using it. It was defective in manufacture. What he showed me was the drain plug would wobble in when you inserted it into the crankcase, the oil pan, because it wasn't manufactured right. Now, if you looked at it quickly, you'd say, wow, it's got a nice finish on it. It looks great. But it's not. It's defective. A magnetic drain, a drain plug from China. Defective.
Well, there's another thing going on here, too, Vincent. Planned obsolescence. It started with Detroit and Mopar, where you could set up a watch to when something would wear out, like a battery. And today, I don't have a screwdriver like the kind that I would have when I was a kid, where I could use it to hammer something out of a piece of wood, like a chisel. I could narf open a door like a crowbar. The metal, the steel that's used is like the distinction difference between 316 stainless and a 305. Everything is jimmied down, engineered to break, so that you have to replace it. The whole concept.
Actually, it's that, and it's more than that. And let me give you an example. So Joan Stadtmiller was here for Christmas and, a few days before and after. It was great having him visit. And I said, so how's your car? He said, well, it makes this sound. I said, well, what's the sound? And, okay. So I said, we're at the kitchen table, and he told me, and that's all he said. Okay, I had no more information than that. And I said, okay, I think I know what it is. I think your tires are out of round. They'd never heard that before. Tires are out. So from his description, I said, I think your tires are out of round. So I said, let's go out into the shop. And I showed him the balancer. We have a wheel balancer here, an old one. It's rust-colored, but it's a really good one. And I showed him that how a technician at a tire shop can balance the wheels, the wheel and tire assembly, and it'll come up as needing 0 weight, meaning 0 on the left or the inside, needing 0 more weight on the outside, indicating perfect balance. And I said, but there are many things that can go wrong. What can happen is the technician can say, well, these are 16-inch wheels when they're 17, which would throw off the amount of weight that you would put on. So they would appear to be balanced when they're not. Or the technician can say these are 7-inch rims when they're 8-inch rims. And that would throw the balance display off. Or the distance from the hub of the balancer to the outside or the inside rim of the wheel could be off by not paying attention, not measuring it. Or the balancer could be out of calibration. Well, we have a balancer that comes with a slug. A slug is a weight, a very, very precise weight. And you screw it into 3 different places, and you run a diagnostic program, and it says, okay, it knows how to recalibrate the balancer based on where that slug is. The slug goes on the inside of the hub, the outside of the hub, and the radial part of the hub. And it will self-balance based on that slug. Well, how often do you calibrate your balancer? I would think once a month would be a good thing to do. Well, I can tell you that this balancer either came from Sam's Club or Walmart because it's manufactured by a company called John Bean. John Bean is the OEM for Snap-on. So if you call John Bean, it will be the Snap-on company. So it's a Snap-on balancer, the best you can get. Okay, I bought it really inexpensively for $400. Yeah. Well, let me tell you why. Because yes,
yeah, I want to do a broader picture here.
Well, hang on.
GNC,
okay. You got to listen to the rest of this. So what happens is you were talking about cheapest is not necessarily Best Buy. So what happens is the companies who have these balance machines don't necessarily spend the time and the labor to calibrate them. So you're going out the door with tires that are not balanced because of carelessness, because of not paying attention to detail. Okay? So what happened to John Stadtmiller is his wheels were out of balance. And when the brand new tires that he had put on, I don't know when, were worn out prematurely because improper balance. And I've got to tell you, every single set of tires that I've gotten has been out of balance for my entire life. And I'll bet you everyone else's is as well because of carelessness and not knowing and not training the people who run the balancers. So I'm just putting an exclamation point on what you just said.
Well, I'm going to take it to I want to take it to a broader level because there's something more going on here. Let me explain. For example, your engineer could not get me online in a normal fashion like he always has done over the last few years. Why? And his explanation, he said, sorry, update required before it would let me sign in. Are you ready? And basically, since Microsoft has taken over Skype, now you have updates that you have to do before you can use Skype. And I remember when Skype never needed updates. It ran just smoothly like Linux. It was when Microsoft took it over that it began to cause troubles with when you went to use it, you couldn't use it because you had updates going on. Even my old computers that I only use just for writing, when I turn them on, Microsoft takes it over. There's no need for that. This is Microsoft trying to take control of your daily action using a tool that doesn't need to be fixed. Updates are for what reason? They've got a better way to do it? Well, the better ways don't work better. They slow everything down. And if you'll notice, we went from XP to Windows, Microsoft 7. Now we're up to, 10. And nobody wants to use 10. Why? Because it doesn't really work. I don't want to put my thumb on a screen because I don't use a smartphone and I don't think with my fingers. Think with my brain. And it's a type of forcement of being in your face. I remember when DeLorean first made a car that they wanted a car that was of the finest technologies available at that moment. Finest material, finest engineering design, etc. Today, I remember Jaguar. When Jaguar first came out, they forgot to put a Zerk in the rear axle. And so what they did is they put in a leaky gasket so that it would lubricate that back part. Now, how's that in terms of engineering and price that you might pay for a Jaguar? I race sports cars. I'm well familiar with designs. That's why I have a Datsun, because as far as I can tell, the Datsun 280Z was the finest single designed automobile per dollar spent. Per dollar spent, there was nothing like it. It was for 7 times more. Porsche 911 couldn't even touch it for quality. And now Nissan is taken over by a bunch of bandits. The president is being sued. I'm watching how the whole thing is around marketing, not delivering quality or service, but requiring your need to come back to them day after day after day. And I'm seeing this in tools. I'm seeing this in food, like your honey. We talked about the honey. The reason you use honey over sugar or molasses or some of the other forms of sugar beet, whatever, was because of the allergens in it that gave you immunity to the local flora that was around when it went into pollination. That whole concept got flushed out of the toilet when Virginia decided to get their honey from China. That's why you buy local honey. You don't buy honey from another country because it's useless. That's not what honey's for. The whole thing is about marketing. And we have now started to see the evil of what capitalism is about. There's, with every system, there's pluses and minuses. Right now, I've had enough of this one. And what I want to do is make my own tools. I don't have a Ford shop yet, but I'll tell you what, I'll bet my Ford shop, if I put a little fire burner over there and a little forge with heat and all of that, I'll bet I could pound out steel better than anything you're going to get out of China.
It's not about that, Rick. Okay, I've got a comment. So, when I hear generalities, I come back to specifics. And we're going into a commercial break, but I'd like to talk about what people expect versus reality. So a person goes in to buy tires at the tire shop, the tire store, and they expect be able to buy 4 tires and be in and out in an hour, okay? Well, we can't do that. My son can't do it. I can't do it. So here's what happens. When you buy tires, you have to put the vehicle on a lift. Okay, it's got to be raised up somehow. Then you dismount the wheel from the car. Then you bring that wheel and tire over to the tire machine, and you remove the old tire, and you put the new tire on. But when you do that, there's a red dot on the sidewall of the tire. That red dot is supposed to be aligned with the tire valve stem. Why? Because there's manufacturing imperfections. When the steel belts are put on, they're overlapped, and there's a heavier part of the tire where that happens. Okay, so they want you to align that with the lightest part of the wheel to compensate for the imbalance of the tire. So you mount the tire properly, and it takes a little longer to line that red dot up because when you put the tire on the tire machine, the tire moves in respect to the wheel. So you've got to realign it, and then you inflate the tire. Then you take the tire off the tire machine with the wheel, and you put it on the balancer, and then you balance it. But you have to tell the balancer the distance that the wheel is from the hub. You have to tell it what diameter the wheel is, and you have to tell it the width of the rim. Okay, you tell it all that because it doesn't know. And then you balance the tire. You can balance it statically or dynamically. Statically is balanced as if the tire is not going to move. But that doesn't happen because the minute you put your tire on your tire and wheel on your car, you expect it to move, roll down the road. So you need to dynamically balance it, and it takes more weights, more time, more care to do that. Then after you balance the tire, you mount the tire and wheel on the car, and then you torque the lug nuts. So all of that takes us 2 hours. It cannot be done properly in 1 hour. However, the customer, when you pull into the tire shop, hey, what's taking so long? It's been a half hour already, and these guys aren't done. They expect it to be done in an hour. And the shop manager expects the guys, the technicians, if you want to call them that, to do all this work in an hour as well. Everybody expects it to be done quickly, and the only way it can be done quickly is to do it without really paying attention to all the details that need to be paid attention to have the job done properly. So what happens in the long run is the tires wear out faster. So John Stadtmiller had tires that looked really great. You look at them on the car and you go, wow, there's plenty of tread left. But because they were not properly balanced, they wore unevenly and they were out of round. So he was going down the road thump, 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 which would wear out the suspension. All because the last guy that balanced the wheels didn't do it properly. Or the machine wasn't calibrated. Or it was set up wrong. Or the technician set in the wrong parameters when he balanced the wheel. Or there's one other thing, and that is a rounding feature on these machines. You can set these tire balance machines to say, tell you what, if it's within a half an ounce, that's close enough. So tell me 0, 0, meaning I need no more weights because it's close enough. Well, a half an ounce is not close enough. So what I'm saying, Rick, is I believe a lot of this is because of greed and because of carelessness and because the customers are impatient. You put all that together and you've got tires wearing out way faster than they should. Just like the guy who forgot to put the Zerk fitting in the engineering drawings of the Jaguar. Let's hurry up. We can get it done faster.
That's why we have, our Les Schwab tire, where they will, if you buy your tires from them, they will come out into the street, find you and fix it right there on the spot for free.
Do they cost more? So they are advertising.
That's why everybody uses Les Schwab.
So they're advertising through quality service.
Service.
Yeah. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of a USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. George in New Hampshire's on the line. Welcome, George.
Hi, Vincent. Hi, Dr. Rick. there's one thing I wanted to just mention to Dr. Rick there. I remember you said recently that you would have to have some work done on your property there, and it might be some trouble for the finances end of it. I just wanted to recommend to you and to the audience there that there's a government agency called USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, RHS, Rural Housing Service. Well, they have a rural development, and if you're over 62 or 62 or over, I believe, you can get a grant for free that you don't have to pay back. That could amount to some thousands of dollars. So I just wanted to recommend that to you, Dr. Rick, that there's usually an office in any kind of there was an office in my city up here, and it's a rural city, but the idea, that's how I bought my house, was through them. And there's a lot of advantages of going through them. And like I said, at 62 plus age, you can get a grant, and that might be a way out for you without having to really bust a budget.
That's wonderful news. Thank you on that. Yeah, mine was the septic tank. As a renter, that septic tank had never been pumped in 34 years.
Wow.
By the way, Vincent, your system using that bladder is how I cleaned it out, and it worked perfectly. Thank you.
You want to share with the class what we were talking about then, Rick? Because you did it.
I'm sorry? You mean the bladder?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're the expert on that. Basically, I could not find the cleanout spout. We had opened up the septic tank, and it was right to the top. I mean, the lid was actually starting to come off the septic tank because of the amount of sewage in it. And it was packed all the way up to the house. And they were going to have to dig, because we couldn't find the cleanout, they were going to have to reset the whole drain field. Not the drain field, the pipe going from the house to the septic tank. And what I did is, right next to the septic tank, I broke a hole and I went in from the opposite side using a bladder that would build up in water pressure using a hose, and then break it down so that it could flow out naturally. And that's what I did. And it's because you can't go in with a roto-rooter. It just simply won't work that way. And I did that, and now they're trying to tell me that the drain field needs to be reset. And I figured that does not true, that basically the ground was perking from serious rain that we've had. Right now it's cold, it's below freezing, and the ground's frozen. But at the time my septic tank went crapped out on me during Christmas, it wasn't draining right because we had tremendous rain to the point where it was starting to stand or perk on the land itself. There was no drainage. And, of course, it's plugged all the way up to the house, so sewage was coming in through my bathroom in the basement. And it was real creepy during Christmas. But I got it all fixed. Everything done right, cleaned up. And now I'm going to explore this other thing because, yes, I would love to be able to own my own home and rather than be a renter. And with the fear of always not knowing whether or not the owner in Hawaii is going to want to put the house on the market so that they can invest in their own home in Hawaii. I don't know. Yeah.
Here's another, Dr. Rick, here's another thing.
By the way, thank you for that.
No, but I got another option. I bought my house through them. Now, you could be eligible for a 1% interest loan. And the nice thing with this outfit is that if you lose your job, say, or you have some crisis in the family where you get hurt, you're out of work, or whatever, an interruption, they'll work with you. They won't foreclose on your house so long as you're basically living in it and you're dealing with them honestly. But I found they have a number of foreclosures in inventory at USDA, RHS, Road Development, state to state, county to county. You might find a house that maybe somebody just walked away from for any number of reasons, or for whatever reason, it gets turned back in. And a lot of times, all they want is whatever the original loan was, and some of these loans can go back years, so that the market was very different back then, but whatever is still outstanding on the loan, they'll basically sell it to you for that put you into it. Now you have to go, with the federal government, you know how they are, they want things in triplicate, and you gotta do some some running around. But the thing is, I've been in my house now for almost 20 years, and I'll tell you, I didn't plan on going this route, but they happened to have acquired the house that I was interested in, and no local real estate people were able to get me into the house, so I wouldn't bid on a foreclosure that I couldn't walk around and inspect, right, gentlemen? I mean, none of us would. So, but I would look into that USDA option, because for the simple reason, there's a lot of, from county to county, there's a lot of houses in inventory. And
I qualified for HUD. I went through the paperwork. I had to do it 4 times, and the last time I did it, the way I qualified, and then they ran out of money, and so I had to redo it again. When I did, they said my incomes were too high. What does that mean? Well, I had over $1,000 a month in supplemental incomes. I'm on Social Security, and then I had $1,000 a month in book sales. The thing is, 50% of that was toward expenses, but HUD doesn't work that way. It isn't what you get to keep, it's what you take in. And my incomes were above $1,000, which means I didn't qualify for HUD, even though I do. Isn't that weird? There's these little loopholes, and each time you go through the hoop, then they find another hoop for you to go through, and at the end of the day, it's still no.
But where you're living, it's a rural area, so you can bypass HUD, because I've seen some nice properties that HUD took over, but it was kind of a nightmare to try to figure out, well, who do you see, who do you talk to, what do you do to go through it? But when I'm saying USDA, they want to keep these rural areas viable, and because a lot of people are moving towards the cities, they're willing to greatly assist you in staying in that area. And I think because you're in a rural area there, I would think that this would be something that would be more practical, I think, maybe than some of these bigger
I'll look into it. I really appreciate it. I'll look into it. The bottom line is I just probably need to get more titles out there for sale. That's how I'm going to survive. I don't know. I'm 74, not 64. So, there's nobody that's interested in hiring me except Bimart. And I could go work at Bimart. That's my option. Even RCC, Rogue Community College, doesn't want me to teach. They think I'm too old. Do you think I'm too old to teach?
Hey, you might have an age discrimination case there. Hey, I'm going to get off, gentlemen. It was nice talking to you, and I know you got a lot of ground to cover. So it was good talking to you, Vincent. Good talking to you, Dr. Rick. You take care.
Thank you, sir.
It's great to hear your voice, George. Thank you so
that's
much.
a good lead. I'll check it out. RHS.
Okay, Rick, you used the word crap, and I don't have any problem with that, and I'll tell you why. The first flush toilet, the invention of the first flush toilet goes to a man named Sir John Harrington, and the godson of Elizabeth I. He invented the first water closet with a raised cistern and a small downpipe through which water would run to flush the waste. That was in 1592. Well, most people believe that a man by the name of Thomas Crapper, C-R-A-P-P-E-R, this is not a joke, this is true. Thomas Crapper designed the first commercially available flush toilet in the 1860s. So the name Thomas Crapper was associated with a flush toilet. So people would say they were going to the crapper, which meant that they were going into the room where the Thomas Crapper flush toilet was. So that's where that came from. There really was a guy by the name of Thomas Crapper, and he came up with the first commercially available water flush toilet. And they used to call those water closets. And that's because there were closets in houses. And it's like, where do you put this flush toilet, this newfangled thing? Well, you don't put it in the living room. You don't put it in the kitchen. So they were put in closets. So then they were water closets. So people would say they were going to the crapper, which was that device that was in the water closet. And then they added sinks, and here we are today with more modern, more expensive, more difficult to maintain toilets. It started commercially in the 1860s because of Thomas Crapper's invention of the water flushing toilet. So I just wanted to share that. Rick, the fires in California. What are your thoughts on what was going on?
You don't want to get me started. We have, PG&E is responsible for the Paradise Fire. There are a bunch of questions, more questions now on what really actually happened. And what's coming out is that the blue so-called laser beams that were seen from space was actually electrical discharge jumping from one smart meter to the next and setting the Paradise Fire where there was a cascade where PG&E said no contest.
Let's talk more about that when we come back. Joey, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hey, Rick. Hey, Vince.
Hey there.
How you guys doing?
Yeah.
Hey, got a question. The question is about the moon. Lately, I always remember the moon, it'd take a whole month almost for a cycle to go by. So like one night you go outside and there's a quarter moon. The next night you go outside, there's a half of a moon. The next night, there's 3/4 of a moon. And of course, the fourth night, it's a full moon. And then the fifth night, I know kind of where the moon is depending on what time I let the dog out. So say I let the dog out at 11 o'clock at night. The moon is usually at 12 o'clock off my porch. The dog goes out at 4 in the morning. It's at 4 o'clock. But I remember lately the moon happened to be at 11 o'clock at night. It was like at 3:30, using my porch as the start point and then your basic clock. So am I imagining that I seen a moon go through 4 seasons or 4 quarter, half, 3/4, and full in 4 days? Are we being altered with time? What am I trying to ask you a question about?
Pole shift.
That's what you're attributing it to?
Yes. Just like the Inuit. The Inuit say historically the stars are not in the same location because the pole has shifted. The Earth is now spinning differently. Australia is now moving toward the equator, if you will, in terms of spin on the Earth.
As it spins differently, does that affect our time?
Well, in some manner, the way the moon doesn't rotate. It's got this hollowness to it. Isn't that interesting? It does. It has some kind of it's like it's not really a moon. And I'm not sure what that means astrophysics-wise, other than the mass is wrong, and it probably is hollow, just like they say. It's an artificial object in space around the Earth. It's moving, so is the Earth, so is the sun in its relationship to the Earth. And so things that you used to line up on where your North Pole star was for, your cadence and compass, it's all changing right now significantly.
How does that affect the way we? How does that affect the way we think? How our emotions? I mean, because
astrology, astrology has always been considered a pseudoscience, but during the 70s, a series of things came out with a new concept called cosmobiology, which was out of Prague, very high tech. When a woman is born, it sets the phase of the moon at that location where she's born, sets her ovulation cycle. And if she moves, it changes. And that was Guineiff's work on the lunar sex cycle of the female that was used efficiently for birth control and the determination of the sex of a child based on conception. Now, is that real or not real? You know, synchronicity is one of those things where you're trying to isolate variables, and there is strong evidence to include that consciousness and what we call reality is a dream, and that when a storm on Jupiter occurs, it has a metaphor on Earth because space and time aren't real. It's a way of looking at things that may or not be, predicting accuracy. Originally, astrology was not used for personality. It was called hore, to find missing objects. When did you lose something? And you could find it using astrology. Now, that's all changed now, and now we're into, you're a Pisces with a da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, well, all of that is metaphor.
Joey in Michigan's with us. Joey, you're talking about the moon?
Well, during 2 breaks ago, one of the commercials were that the Chinese went to the moon. They landed on the north side of the moon. So I guess they went to meet, what's his name, Pink Floyd. But the point of the question is, I didn't even know they're going to the moon. I don't really watch television, so I don't know what's going on in the make-believe world. But that's one question or one point. The other question is, as of lately, people, not people personally I know, but people I listen to their different YouTube channels, when you start seeing their pictures, they have accelerated aging 3 to 5 years. I mean, you look at a person and you see a person, sometimes I don't look at their site for a week, and it looks like they're a few years older. Now, is that having an effect with this moon? Is this moon out of balance wobble planet pole shift, is that something to do with Nibiru Planet X, with their oval rotation of X versus the rest of us? I mean, because obviously something's happening, and if they keep everybody talking about the football game, the basketball game, the subby game, the meatball, salami salad, whatever stupid stuff they talk about, like these commercials we have to listen to on a radio show, just ridiculous. But what's really happening in your opinion, Rick?
I don't know. I don't really know. And the bad news is I probably... I'm sorry?
Just go off your intuition, off the wall, accurate or not, it doesn't matter, because what I just asked you, no normal person would even think that to be a question. I mean, in what we grew up in the matrix of our world, nobody would ask the question. Nobody even pays attention that the moon was a quarter, one night, half, 3/4 in full, in 4 nights full.
Yeah, that was because back then everybody trusted NASA as being Smokey Bear, not Smokey the Bear. Timelines, Morgellons, all of this stuff that has been thrown in as chaff in the air that we're breathing. I could tell you that right now the Earth is being plummeted with a bunch of dark matter. And when I say that, I mean massive quantities of it right now. What does that mean? I don't know, because we don't even know what dark matter is. Probably what dark matter is the other side of the membrane that we're on. We have matter and we have dark matter, and the membrane is the distinction between a drop of water touching a pool of water. Now, what does that mean from a physics point of view? Well, it's a wide open circus with multiverses and possibilities of what it might imply. What I think is happening is that man's technology has moved faster than man. And that now we're in a place where who's ruling what? And imagination, if that is our true reality, our imagination, and there is a strong evidence to indicate that that's true, because we see paranormal phenomena occurring everywhere. It's not possible, and there it is. How does that work? Well, perception is the issue. Is space and time real? It used to be that that's what everything was measured in, quantum mechanics. And then we had the indeterminacy, that the more you know about one thing, the less you knew about something else. And so we've moved to a different kind of universe on information rather than space-time. But that doesn't mean it's going to get us closer to any truth. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you listen to Cliff? Cliff High had a thing on. I'm not sure. I know I sent it to you, and I don't know if you listened to it. It was kind of.
I looked at everything you sent me. By the way,
I think it was about what that guy from the Leak Project, and Cliff is talking about what you're always talking about, an alien invasion, completely different than what you would assume, that a third of the population has been modified. It's like a bug. Cliff is saying it's a bug, or a bug like a cockroach or a stick person, a praying mantis, but not what we're accustomed to. And, I mean, it was something so far out of the realm for even Cliff to say, yet you've said it, I've thought it, Vince has thought it, me and Vince have talked about it, your black goo. However you want to mix up the cookie mix or the cake mix, the bottom line is we are being altered, terraformed, modified, whatever the situation is, and we all feel it. We just can't comprehend it because is it because they're blocking our receptor frequencies? I mean... Oh,
no. Here it is. It's like this. It's like I've seen orca that have a brain literally twice the size of man's brain.
Right.
And their cerebral cortex, the higher brain in orca, is twice the size of man's brain. And that mammal is firing 60% of it, not 10, like man is. Now, what would that imply? Well, maybe orca is God. Not our God, but God in that the definition I use for God is that which cannot be known. You can only experience it. When the good Reverend Jackson says, is that fence over there, is that a white fence or is that a black fence? And the correct answer is yes, because your limitation in viewing the fence from only one perspective, and you don't see the other side of the fence at the same time. Now, that's a metaphor in terms of not knowing what's really going on, because what you have to view things is limited. A resolution of information. That's what a microscope and a telescope do. They move you from one level of information to the next. And it's a way of looking at things, but now we're discovering the limitation in information like we've discovered the limitation in space-time. It used to be when you did laws in physics, you start with assumed truths and definitions before you even get to the theorems and axioms and postulates and da-da-da-da-da, but laws. But an assumed truth might be the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Well, today, we don't even think that anymore. Now we talk about curved space.
Rick, Joey's bringing up a point. He didn't say it this way, but I believe this is what he's saying.
Okay.
So let's say we know a guy by the name of Tom, and we haven't seen Tom in years. And then we run across Tom, and we look at Tom and we go, what happened to Tom? Who are you? Because that guy that now says he's Tom looks way older than the 3 years that you would imagine that Tom would have aged since you last saw him. Joey, is that what you're saying?
Dick Clark, who looks a lot younger. Look, everything changes. And memory is confabulated.
Joey, is that what you're saying? We are aging faster?
Vince, it's exactly, and most of the time, the only way I can tell who the person is because their voice. When they say hello, and I have to think, who is that person? And I have to play that voiceover. And then I'm like, you got to be kidding. And I'm thinking, wow. And if I'm perceiving that person that way, only I can imagine what they're perceiving me like. You know.
Well, I would like to be like Amadeus Bach chasing women around in the castle.
Yeah, well, and your castle will soon be here.
Well, you know, the laughter, the idea. What we're watching is, I wouldn't want to be president of the United States. Now, there's this person you can physically watch age in a 4-year period every day. Every day, that man is getting older, literally, because of what he has to deal with. I understand what you're saying, and yet I've been on American Bandstand. Yeah, Clark. You know, the idea that he's getting, or Robert Young, you know, that father knows best. I don't know.
But there's the pole shift because the pivot is changing, and now it's rotating different. Is it elongated rotation? Is that why a day seems longer?
There is, okay. There is a concept about time where each of us have a different relationship to time. And as we get older, time seems to speed up instead of a little kid. Are we there yet? Impatient and waiting. The idea of time having sacredness to it, where it, all of a sudden, in that moment, it becomes timeless. And you've lost everything, like, you know, aging, the idea that time is even real. You don't experience something from that point of view. You're in the moment, inflamed, if you will, a man on fire, caught up in that moment to the point where it becomes sacred. And this is...
You're right.
Yeah.
When I'm doing something and I really enjoy it, it seems like the day took forever to go by. I enjoyed it so much. But when I'm going through the motions...
That is what we're all seeking in every moment.
Well, because when you're with people you don't like, or you're doing something you don't like, the whole week goes by like a flash of a second. Go ahead, Vince.
I had a question for Rick about the moon. And here's the question.
Moon
we know the moon has little to no atmosphere, right? So the moon doesn't have weather the way Earth does, because there's no or little wind, right? So on the moon, my research tells me that the moon can reach temperatures up to 250 or 253 degrees Fahrenheit. And at night, the temperature can drop to 243 degrees, below zero. Now, back in 1971 and 72, we had a lunar roving vehicle, an LRV, it was battery powered. You put a couple astronauts in and ride around, allegedly. I'm sorry, please continue, Rick.
Okay. In space, they put a heater on a battery just like they do the person that's in space in a spacesuit. And because it will affect the anode and cathode, and the way the mobility in the solid-state physics of an electrochemical battery. However, now we use different kinds of batteries, and they come in all sizes, and some of them, using nuclear radiation, are used, like isotopes, because there's a requirement of a lot of power just to heat the battery so that the function of an electron moving from the anode to the cathode occurs correctly in the transfer of information or energy going through the battery. And so the batteries are designed for temperature. If you're climbing a mountain and you have your little cell phone with you, is the cell phone going to work the same on top of a mountain? No, it isn't, especially if you're at 14,000 feet. And so they're taking a picture using the battery will wear out more. It requires more energy to cause the material to heat enough that the functioning correct. That's why we design batteries for altitude. The question itself is interesting because there's more variables going on here. Gravity and the idea of it in terms of how that's going to work in your plumbing for taking a shit. If you in space, you have problems because your whole digestive processes are based on gravity. And if you're in a no gravity or low gravity situation, things change, including cell salts in your brain. And as such, causes trouble. That's one of the reasons why most advanced civilizations that are spaceflight use, what do they call that? I'm thinking of the word that we did a movie on where you have God, I can't think of the word. I'm losing the word right now. It's not an android, but what you have is a machine that you slide into like a physical body that's been designed. What's that?
You're talking about an exoskeleton type machine?
Yeah, but there was a whole movie on it where the guy is a cripple. He goes into it, and he's in a normal body on this planet with other, with a mother tree. And I can't think of the name of the movie right now. I've got a brain.
Watch more movies.
Android. It starts with an A. Anyway, what will basically happen is man is not designed to be able to travel in space. Neither are aliens. And so what they do...
Rick, did we go to the moon, get off, walk around, get back on a capsule and come back?
I don't know if we did it when we said we did it. Yes, we've been there now. Yes, of course. However, did we do it when we said we did it? I don't know, because right back then, the Van Allen belt and other kinds of barriers would not allow a human being to go into deep space any more than you want to be under an X-ray machine for more than 2 hours. It's going to have an effect on your body, and we don't have any way of shielding that. And, we've got problems going into space because we've been designed to stay here on Earth.
Joey, any last second thoughts, questions?
No, I appreciate all the help, Rick.
Stay tuned. Film at 11. I don't know.
Be safe.
Be safe.
Joey, be safe.